All right, we can go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us. This is our second office hour during the benefit of the bargain round application window. This is your time to ask us any questions. We do have a couple of topics that we're going to cover really quick. They're mainly topics that we're seeing a lot of questions on, either through the inbox, on these calls, to our grant managers. So we're going to address a couple things first that may help answer some questions, but other than that, this is your time to ask us any questions. So before we do get started on questions, just a reminder, the application window opened on Monday, July 7th, and it does close on July 21st, which is a Monday at 10 a.m. So we're in the application window. Because of that, we can't provide any information in terms of, how to improve your scores, just anything that gives you information on how to fill out your application. We can't provide any of that. So we can do our best to provide you to where you can find answers to that information, but we just can't help anybody with applications. So and then Terry has a couple of things she wants to cover before we open for questions. So Allie, go ahead.
Hey y'all, good afternoon. Just wanted to bring up a couple of things that as we've been chatting in the office, wanted to make sure you're aware of. So I know that in the last office hours I mentioned we have so little time to cure. And there were a couple of questions about the letter of surety and specifically this is not you don't have to provide your letter of credit or your performance bond. You have to provide proof that you can do meet the requirements. But one of the things we wanted to make sure that we mentioned is in our prior rounds, this is one of the areas of noncompliance. And so we just wanted to call it out really explicitly. Please remember to upload your surety letter. Please double check the guidelines and make sure that it meets in all forms the criteria in the guidelines. There were some questions about additional flexibility. There is no additional flexibility. We have the policy notice from the feds. They did not add any additional flexibility to these requirements. So please upload your surety letter so that we don't want people to be disqualified when they don't need to be. The other thing we wanted to draw your attention to, for those of you that have applied before, to one new additional item. So again, this is linked on our website. You're able to download it early if you haven't gotten into the portal yet. There is a sustainability and technical questionnaire. If you haven't taken a look at it, we encourage you to take a look at it now. Look at the things that are going to be asked for the types of technology that you're going to use so that you're able to complete it and submit it a complete version. Again, these are a couple of areas where knowing that we have such a limited time to review, we just don't want people to not get through on a technicality. We want the applications to look fantastic and to be complete so that we're able to make really informed decisions. So we're happy to take any questions that you have. Those were just the only two things I wanted to bring up really quickly.
Okay. Thanks, Allie. So like we said, or like Allie said, we'll take your questions. A couple ways you can do that. You can raise your hand, which there's a button down. I'm looking and I actually don't see it, but I was just trying to tell you guys where the raise your hand button is. You can raise your hand and come off mute and ask, or you can drop it in the chat. And I will read it out loud for everybody. So we'll go ahead and take questions. And I do see some things in the chat, but it looks like it's CBO staff posting some things. Okay, the scalable technology questionnaire is in there, like Allie was referencing. So, okay. So, are there any questions? I know it could take a minute to type a question in the chat too, so we're going to give relatively long pauses between questions just to give you time. But again, you can raise your hand and ask too. So.
And the raise hand button, Craig found it, is under React, and then you'll see it if you click the React button.
Thanks, Megan. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Craig.
Hey, Lauren. Can you talk generally about what decisions you'll make or what scoring you'll do based on BSL level versus project area level versus application level?
Megan, do you want to speak to that? Or is that better alley question?
I was hoping Judd might chime in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Craig, I assume your question is when there's overlapping applications. And the initial analysis and really where it begins is at the project level. So that's where we would look at the project level, average cost per BSL for, let's say, 2 overlapping applications. That's where we start.
Yeah, some of it is as you look at that flow chart and some of the examples. So the flow chart doesn't necessarily specify if each box or decision is at a BSL, a project level, or application level. But then there's some of the examples. One example said, if there's 1,500 by 1,500 in one and 2,000 in another, and that one was within 15%, then it goes to secondary criteria. But then at some level, it would seem that you have to get down to the BSL level because you have to tie out all BSL specifically in what you tie it together and some in a final proposal. So when you're looking at the final cost and you say the average cost per BSL, but then if somebody is doing 1,500 in a project area and another person is doing 2,000, other states have extrapolated that to all BSLs, but then that's a decision that's at the aggregate level, but it's on a per BSL basis. So it gets a little confusing, when you're thinking about how you put that cost per BSL and tally that all together in the application.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to follow, but I guess my baseline answer is it starts at the project level. Average cost per BSL. It's kind of confusing because of the lingo, but it's average cost per BSL of the project when we're pairing two projects against one another.
Okay, and then for the tips and tricks or some of the other documents, they have a maybe open-ended phrase in there about generally the same BSLs or same count. And so when you're looking at a application short form or something that we submitted in round 1 or 2, and having these words around generally the same or about the same number or the same locations that you're putting in, is that discretionary as to what you include this round versus past rounds, or is there more detail somewhere in the documentation around that distinction?
I can offer a little bit of perspective on this. Craig, the reason that we're able to use the short form instead of having a full application is because the majority of the information we can still use. You don't need to resubmit it. And so when you think about the information that you submitted in the first one, obviously your financial management information doesn't change. None of that changes. But the areas where the reason that we said sort of generally it needs to be in the same area is things like your review of your NEPA requirements. So like wetland maps and the types of critical crossings that you may have, making sure that you're really sort of thinking critically about what the project is going to look like when you're creating your timeline. That's the reason we're asking you to stay, relatively within scope. And so if you review your original application and the project that you are proposing, you believe that information still applies, then you can use the streamlined application. If for some reason you feel like it's so different that you really should be sort of proving to us that you have reviewed all of that information in a, you know, a responsible way, then you would want to submit a standard one. And so we are really sort of leaving it to the discretion of applicants, but know that that's what we're going to be comparing. So we will be reviewing on some level your streamlined application with your prior application. So if there's information that's missing, you're going to want to make sure that that's clearly articulated, and that may be a standard application rather than a streamline. So so you applicants really do get a little bit of discretion about on this.
Okay, and last question, so I don't have to laboriously find the raise hand button again. When you look at the guidelines and you talk about all the requirements are removed this go around, can you comment generally on which ones will still require costs once you get to an actual award versus not being considered for criteria and evaluation? Meaning, if the NEPA and environmental regulations may not be a reward criteria or award criteria, but then you still have to put the bill later for it, then it's going to be a cost that goes in and it's still required later, just not in the application round. So is there a place to see that for the things that were taken out, but will still be considered as part of any final contracts?
Let me try and restate your question. I'm not sure I quite understood it. I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing. So, I think what you're asking is if you were going to try and use the streamlined application. So basically you were standing on a prior application, that there are changes that would happen to your NEPA review based on that. Is your question whether or not you would be able to add those items into your budget? I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
No. So policy notice said take all this stuff out and
Yeah.
evaluate based on that. Even though you take it out for the consideration, are you going to require it for the contract later? So it still has to be part of the cost, but you're just not evaluating it now. So it's almost like a hidden cost now, or our cost items, which are viable because environmental lawyers cost money. It's still going to be in there. It's just not part of the evaluation criteria now. So do you have a section or a comment on all what's going to be kept in there later and what was just jettisoned for this BOB round?
Got it. Yes. Okay. So great question. Thank you. So I'm going to just restate it one more time, make sure that I'm right. But basically what I think you're saying is based on the policy notice, we had to make adjustments to the program and we pulled out a number of requirements in response to the policy notice. There are some requirements that still stay in. How do you know what's still in and what's not there and what should be included in your programmatic costs for the budget? So did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. So I direct you actually to the program guidelines, the full version, so the standard version. So for example, NEPA is still required. So you're still going to have to go through a NEPA process. The state is still going to require all that information and we have to submit it to the feds. And in fact, in the policy notice, they even explicitly tell us how we have to submit it to the feds. So those requirements are still there, and you'll be able to see that if you look at the current bargain of the benefit of the bargain round program guidelines. So anything that is in there is what is required. There are things like labor requirements. So there was some reporting in some states, they had requirements for paying prevailing wage. Colorado never had that. So those requirements have been removed. So if you do not see them in the program guidelines, you certainly should not be including them in in your budget, but also they shouldn't be hidden costs. We've removed them. And you'll be able to see it, Craig, in the application as well. There are numbers that are basically just missing. So there's sections that are missing that are no longer requested in the application, but they're also not part of the program anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I'm going to read a question in the chat first, and then Maisie, I'll come back to you, okay? The question is the bar for the 15% set per project in a given project area, or is that the lowest cost from all applications for BEAD in Colorado? In other words, how will you look at and weigh project areas with only one application to determine if it is a reasonable cost versus high cost? Allie, you want to take a stab at that one?
Or I can, either way.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I kind of look at that as two separate questions. The 15%, within 15% is at a per project level, average cost per BSL at the project level. And then the question about what is a reasonable cost, or what is, they use the term excessive cost. We don't have any guidance from NTIA on that, and so we don't have any guidance we can give you. I think on the prior call, we said we're looking at things like the cost quest data, round one, round two, even prior grant programs that the CBO has done to kind of get a feel for what would be a reasonable cost, or at least not an excessive cost.
Thanks, Judd. And Kim, if you have any follow-up, just drop it in the chat. Oh, you said thank you. Okay, good. That answered. Thanks, Judd. Okay, Maisie, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for hosting the meeting today. I had emailed the broadband data team on Monday regarding a question on some new eligibility classifications and haven't heard back yet. I wanted to make sure the email was received and see if any clarification was available. I'm not sure. I don't think the issue is data processing on my end, and what I'm seeing were some locations that were showing as not eligible in the January data set, but that are now showing as eligible. So, yeah.
Yep, I can take that one. We did receive your email, and I thought we had responded, but I haven't hit send yet. So I'll get that out the door. But essentially, I think the potential confusion there is in the round two data set. We basically categorized a lot of locations as not available for bidding because we had a oh my gosh, I need the right words. We had a preliminary award selected for those locations. I'd have to look back and see if we also took out any of the enforceable commitments and other no BEAD locations at that time. But basically, we just kind of categorized those as not available for that round. But everything in the location list is still an eligible location up until we turn in our final proposal.
Okay, so the concern on our part is that the locations that I was asked to review were reported as receiving code 50 service in the most recent, well, I guess the December 31st, 2024 FCC reporting cycle. And they were reported as having a fiber service, and they're still showing as eligible for BEAD. And so that's caused some consternation internally, and is essentially what we're trying to understand.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a closer look at the specific locations. But essentially, you know, we follow the NTIA guidance on taking those locations off the map, so to speak. Like categorizing them as a no bead location. So if we don't have the evidence to show that those are served, then we cannot use those codes. So we'll go back and double check those locations, and I'll make sure we get that response sent over to you.
Okay, thanks. These have been a matter of discussion for some time, and I think there's been quite a bit of back and forth already. So if we need to set up a call with our team and review it, we're certainly happy to do that. Cool. All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Maisie. Thanks, Megan. Okay. I don't see questions in the chat and I don't see any hands raised. So we'll give it a moment. We do for some reason run out of questions and nobody has any more. We likely won't go the full hour. We'll cut the call short, but we'll wait for a little bit to see if people have more questions.
I did have a quick clarification item, and Judd, forgive me if you already said this, and I missed it because you may have. We talk about the subsidy, the cost per BSL internally, and just want to make sure that it's really clear that it's actually the BEAD subsidy per BSL when Judd's sort of talking about all these averages. You'll take the total cost to serve the BSL, but any money that you have in match, anything that offsets the cost basically to the federal government, that's what you're evaluated on. And so when you're thinking about how you're creating your applications, just keep in mind that could be a very expensive BSL to serve, but if you're only asking us for a little bit, that's what you're judged on. You're judged on that smaller amount.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Okay, there is a question in the chat. Is there a certain dollar threshold or range that is considered too high of cost for a BSL? For example, bead outlay per sub. That is from Cole in the chat.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think that's similar to the answer I already gave. You'll see in the flow chart, we'll do a excessive cost review at the beginning of that flow chart and kind of another one at the end. And that, like I said, we don't have any guidance from what the dollar threshold is from NTIA, so we don't really have any guidance for you. I think internally we're looking at the cost quest data per BSL, the round one and round two, or even prior Colorado Broadband Office grants in that area, for instance. So we don't really have a dollar figure for you, but that's how we'll be looking at it. And again, we'll look at that. In that case, we'll look at the cost, the BEAD cost, the subsidy cost. If you have a very high match, it may pass muster, even though the total cost per BSL is high. We're looking at the BEAD outlay.
All right, thanks, Jed. Appreciate it. And Cole, if you have anything to add or a follow-up, just let us know. Raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Okay, we'll wait a minute to see if there's any other questions that come up.
While we're waiting, I did want to point out, Kristen put in the chat the updated FAQ document. We're trying to keep that really up to date. So, new answers are being posted in there every couple days. So make sure to, keep an eye on that. If you have questions, they may already be answered.
Okay, thanks for that, Megan. Next question in the chat. Is there a cap on the administrative / post-award costs? No, Allie, do you want to take that one?
So generally speaking, this is a construction grant. This is not to be used for administrative costs. If you can go ahead and put them in for consideration if that's something that you want to do, but we strongly discourage using costs for employee salaries unless they are employees that are directly related to the construction or project management of the grant. So no, there's technically no cap, but those costs would certainly be questioned.
All right, thanks, Ally. Okay, we will. Oh, okay, Fiona said thank you. Perfect. All right, we'll give it a minute. See if there are any other questions. Oh, okay, there is a question in the chat. So, question is, has any clarification, information, or guidance that has been given from the NTIA regarding how the state will consider the Infrastructure Act, which defines priority projects as those that get first dibs on a given area and must easily scale speeds over time to meet the evolving connectivity needs of households and businesses and support the deployment of 5G, successor wireless technologies, and other advanced services, in addition to meeting minimum speeds and latency requirements. Tony, Kim, I think you're asking, is there any additional guidance given on that portion? Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, team, does anyone want to take?
I can start out, the others can chime in. Yeah, so the reason we included that scalable technology questionnaire is exactly to this point, and that's why it's so important that that is filled out, because the scalability questionnaire makes the applicant define how their technology is going to be scalable to that whole the quote you put in your chat there. So we'll use that information and look at what's supplied to us to determine if it does meet that quote that you have there from scalable technology. And if it doesn't meet that, then it could be considered a non-priority application.
All right, thanks, Jed. Yeah, perfect. And then Kristen dropped the scalability questionnaire in the chat up toward the beginning. So if you weren't on at that time or didn't see that, Kim, you can scroll up and find that.
Yeah, I put it in there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important document for everybody to fill out and really supply as much information as you can to support your claim that it is scalable.
And I would add to Judd's point, just to sort of reinforce, it isn't the state's responsibility to assume that your project is scalable or meets the criteria. It's the applicant's responsibility to prove that it is. So please use the scalability questionnaire to document your justifications there.
One other thing that the NTIA, I think it's in their guidance as well, is that analysis is done on a per project basis. It's not done on per technology, because one project might be scalable in one application and it might not be scalable in another project area.
All right. Thank you both. That was good information.
Sorry,
No other
one
questions?
more.
Yeah.
One more clap. I'm so sorry, but
Go ahead.
I actually just clicked on the link Judd left and then it triggered something for me. So as a reminder, if you are proposing 2 technologies or more, you will have multiple tabs to fill out. So don't just fill out one, fill out all. Sorry, another sort of trick of the trade. Please don't forget.
Good, Ally. I'm wondering if maybe we should put a note on top of the scalability questionnaire that reminds people to do that. So, Jed, would you mind dropping the link in again? It looks like Kim didn't see it actually, and if you joined after he dropped it in, then you probably wouldn't see it. So thanks, Jed. Oh, and Ally did it too. Okay. Thanks, Trice. Yes. All right. We'll wait to see if there are any other questions. I don't see any at this time. Thanks, Megan. Megan dropped in the website for the benefit of the bargain round, which has all these resources and information. So you can find it there too. Okay, while we wait just to see if there are any other questions, because again, I know it can take a minute to type them in. The email that's on the screen is another way that you can submit questions and receive answers. So that's the advance underscore, there's an underscore there, sorry, at CBO dots or underscore CBO at state.co.us. Any questions that you email there, we will answer in the FAQ that's posted to the website so that everybody receives the same information. And that FAQ is updated pretty often because we are getting a lot of questions. So check it pretty frequently for new information. So if you think of something after the call, then you can email us as well. And then we will have 2 more office hours next week. So Monday and Wednesday, both at noon. So if you can join us then to bring any questions you have during the application window. I still don't see any other questions. So again, we'll cut the call short if there is nothing else. But I'm going to give it just another minute or two just in case. Okay. I think that must be it. So then I guess we'll say thank you for joining us, and we will post the answers to the questions on this call, as well as the recording, so you can go back and watch anything too. So, and always reach out to us if you guys have any other questions. But if there's nothing else at this time, we'll go ahead and end the call. So thank you, everybody.